Laura Ollinger, and welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom. Today we are on the Zingo World Network of Spanglish World, and it's be found on channels 250 and 251 of Zingo TV. So be sure to download the Zingo TV app on your iOS or Android device. It can also be downloaded on your Amazon, Roku sticks, all smart TVs 2016 and moving forward. So today, I'm so excited to introduce you all to Brenda Melendez, a friend of mine that we've known each other for a couple years now. We first met through the Neuroencoding Institute, where we both have become elite certified neuroencoding specialists. So welcome, Brenda. Say hello to everyone.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be in the show again, because I used to be with Paula. Now I get to be with you. I'm so happy that we can share this moment together.
Awesome. Making the rounds. So welcome back to Zingo. And let's just dig right in. And so I want to start asking some real personal questions, because I know that you are an incredibly kind of open, vulnerable person. You're just really willing to share your own personal struggles in order to help people. And that has what has made you such an amazing coach, because you're able to connect with people on such a deep level. And I think that's just one thing that I've always observed about you, that it's just very raw. This is Brenda. There is no, fakeness going on. This is the real Brenda. And so how did you come into the realization that you needed to make a change in your family? Because that was kind of like your professional life and your personal life were very much going in parallel together. So can you explain a little bit about what happened?
Well, yeah, it's a good question, I will say, because it takes me back in October 2020, when my daughter was in the hospital because she tried to commit suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, at that time, I felt like everything just went, upside down. I was like, what's going on in here? I started to look into myself, like, am I doing something wrong? I guess because that's the first questions, a lot of us ask, especially as a mom. We feel a lot of responsibility, right? That we carry a lot with our kids. And I started just asking questions. I started blaming my husband. Like, maybe it's you, maybe it's it me. Nothing is working on me. So when she was in the hospital, I just remember, because she will call me from there, because it was during COVID that we couldn't go in and visit her. So it was even tougher, because we had to let our baby girl stay at the hospital while we came home and take care of the rest of the kids. And I remember I was like, this is really hard. I was like, I do not wish nobody, any mom, any parents to go through this. And I just said, you know what, God, if you have something for me, show me the way, because clearly I don't get it. Because when I was 17, I tried to commit suicide as well. So then I saw the pattern, my daughter, me, and then me having two little ones. I said, what's next? Who's going to be the next one? So I started freaking out. And I said, definitely, I'm not doing something. Definitely something is wrong, but who is it? So I was trying to look for, who to blame on. So the deeper I went into that conversation, like, what do I have to do? So I just, started praying, got on my knee, and you know what? I said, if it's me, show me the way. Tell me what to do, because I'm sick and tired and I don't want to live like this the rest of my life. I said, all I want to do is just die, because literally, I just want to run away. But I was like, how can I do that? I have two little ones. So then I got into the personal development. I met I got the possibility to go into, Tony Robbins' world. And then I met Bino and then Joseph. I was like, wow, this is a different world.
Yeah.
There's hope, right? So it wasn't just like, oh, I had to just wait with all this baggage that I have. I just had to carry on by myself. I felt like I found a community of people that understand me, that understand my situation, where I don't feel judged, where just feel appreciated and help me carry that through. Because if you see it like, you're a mom, I'm a mom, right? And when we understand each other, we help each other.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
all the words back then, I used to hear was like, um, be patient, pray, you know, fasting, do this, do that. But I felt like none of that was working. And now I realize why. It's not that God doesn't listen to you, it's that we have to do our part too.
Mhm.
There's work that needs to be done. And I figure
Mhm.
it out because now I can tell you a different story. My daughter, definitely, she's out of suicidal thoughts. She's definitely, doing so much better, which I feel proud of her because I tell her, like, I'm just the guide. I'm not the hero in the story. The hero are you with your
Mhm.
own effort. I'm just here. And I realize it's like a lot of times we want our kids to change. We find, resources for our kids so they can get help. When we mom, we are left behind. We don't pay
Mhm.
attention to ourselves. We just think that they are going to do the work and they'll be fine. But to tell you the truth, to be honest, what had worked for me as a coach for moms, for stressed parents, is the parents are the one that needs to do the job if they want to see the result in their children.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's the magic. Even me saying I get whoops, whoops, what is it? Bumps in my body because it's I done it in the past. I hire someone to help her. It was good because it led me to realize that, you know what? Why just leave her alone and do the work? Why not me join? Because when we get together, we multiply. We get
Mhm.
all the results that when just one person doing it alone, it is harder. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love the transformation that you went through because what you first described was you were looking for someone to blame. And you kind of then, you know, empowered yourself and turned inward. And I think this is what I heard, but correct me if I'm wrong. It sounded like you became to a point where you said, I'm not going to blame myself, but I am going to kind of step up and take responsibility because I am her mother, that something has to change, and I'm going to be like kind of a leader and make some changes in myself and hope that those changes then affect her in a positive way. Did I kind of get that right?
Yes, yes. Because when you said the leader, right?
Hmm.
I thought the leader is your husband,
Yeah.
or the leader is someone else's, like, the politics, the religion, anybody else, right? But then I was like, okay, they don't live with me, especially my head, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, something has to connect because I felt lost in my head. Like
Hmm.
that's where all started. So I started finding out what was a true leader. And
Hmm.
if I was willing to step in that, in those shoes, if I
Hmm.
was gonna be able to do that job or the role, right? So I did start. I made the decision because I wanted my husband to ride along with me. I wanted my kids to ride along with me because, as you know, when we're learning so much, you think about it. This is so good,
Yeah.
right? You want all the family to join you. You want your friends. You want everybody that is suffering. You said like, hey, I found something good that can
Mhm.
help. But
Yeah.
guess what? Right? Sometimes people don't listen, maybe because it's not their time yet,
Hmm.
maybe because they feel that they can handle it by themselves,
Hmm.
maybe, any reasons, because we are made up of a lot of excuses why we don't take action. So
Hmm.
then to me was like, am I going to wait for my husband to take action? Am I going to wait for my daughter? Or am I going to do something about it without them? So I decided to, you know what? I'm going to prove to myself because just do the work. Because I used to hear in my head, it's like, just you do it, Brenda, you do it. Because I felt like something was leading me. Just do it. It doesn't matter, what other people say, what other people do, just do it. So then I started working on myself. And I was like, oh,
Hmm.
okay, how does it feel to work on myself? Well, it was more about being aware of my thoughts, aware of my feelings, aware of my actions, right? Because it wasn't just about saying it. It's like, what were those words creating in me? Was it creating fear? Was it creating joy? Scarcity? What was it? So I
Hmm.
used to feel scared all the time, scared
Hmm.
about losing my child, scared by, getting in trouble, scared of money, so many things.
Hmm.
I had to overcome that. And I was like, well, I'm the one in my head. So I'm the one that has the answer. Eventually, I'll be able to figure out, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and that's when I stopped, blaming my husband, blaming other people, because it's like we all have responsibility. As much as I understand, other moms, that we carry a lot as far as I think raising the kids, because a lot of times we are the ones that spend more time with them, right? So
Mhm.
that, to me, the way I felt it is like I feel even more responsibility because
Yeah.
I'm with them,
Mm.
most of the time. So I'm their model of their world.
Yeah.
Who are they watching? They're watching mom. So if mom is angry all the time, that's what they're catching on, right?
Mhm.
Mom
Mhm.
is sad, because I used to see my little one when my daughter was in the hospital. She would tell my husband, "Daddy, daddy, mom is crying again."
Mm.
Mommy's
Mm.
on the stairs. Mommy's this, because I couldn't hide the pain.
Yeah.
So then I was like, well, it's me that has to do something about it. And I did
Mhm.
it at the beginning, I did it for the love of my children. Because any mom, I think we put our kids first. And I did it
Totally.
for them. And
Yeah.
at some point, I realized, what? It's not just about them, it's about me, because I matter as a mom. I am value as a mom.
Mhm.
Right? So I started like giving me some love, instead of waiting for the people to come and rescue Brenda, waiting for the people to, to love me.
Mm.
And then I believe that's when the whole transformation came,
Mm.
because I
You're
started seeing myself differently.
mhm. So you're almost like you're evoking a lot of like emotion in me right now. I almost feel like teary because that is the exact reason why I do this show. It's so important because we all want our kids to be happy and successful and thriving and healthy and all these things. And it's, in order to get that, we're all about like giving and doing for our kids. But the number one best way is for moms to be in a good place mentally, physically, health, right? Like socially, spiritually, all these things, because we are kind of the ground zero, if you will, of where these things come from. So if you have an anxious teenager, the first thing I do is I look at the mom and I'm like, well, are you anxious? Right? Because 99% of the time they are. If you have a sad child, are you sad? Right? The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And so it's like, I love how you just took so much kind of accountability and responsibility. And like you said, you didn't wait for your husband, you didn't wait for your daughter. You just said, okay, it's gotta change now. And I'm gonna do that. And so I think that's what I hope the moms here today, hear literally with their ears, hear what we're saying, that if your child is struggling, instead of, I love, get help for your child, right? Because that is helpful. Like there's never a time when that's a bad thing. It only is helpful. But the other thing you can do is get some change for yourself. So as far as when you coach clients, what is that process like when somebody comes to you? What are some things that you can do or say to them? Like if there is a mom listening today and they're like, oh my gosh, this is in my family right now. This is happening. Like I have a really, sad child, or I really this, what are some things that you could say to them that would be helpful?
Well, first, I believe is for the mom is don't be so hard on yourself.
Mm.
Because if you think about it, I mean, nobody was born with the knowledge, right? This is our first time being moms. It's not like
Mhm.
we've been moms forever, right? So when you on your first kids, you make a lot of mistakes unconsciously. I believe it all unconsciously, because like
Yeah.
when I heard someone say that there's no way a mom stop, loving their child, because we have that bond, right? There's a hormone in our body that it gets created, it expands when we are pregnant and when our child is born. So whenever a mom, give away their child, it's not really their fault. It's mentally stuff. They're not, there's something else. So we cannot be so judgmental of that mom. So to me, it's like number one is, forgiveness within you. Have self compassion. Why? Because sometimes we make things out of, just sometimes we wake up, right? And then we don't know what to do. So we just turn on the TV, and then that's the program, that it start running into our mind. Whatever you
Mhm.
see. you start creating. And
Mhm.
then we go pick up our child, and then we don't realize that, you know, is running in the back end of our mind without even us realizing what we're doing.
Mm.
So then, when I go to the mom, it's like, okay, let's start working on it. Let's start just mainly, I think I like to listen to what they have to say, because a lot of times I feel not many people might understand unless you're a mom. Because, like, if you were just went to school to study, I guess the psychology or the mom, but it's like if you describe pain, like, labor pain, if you're not a mom, you will not understand it
Mhm.
because it's kind of undescribable.
Mhm.
Like, people
Yeah.
ask me, my kids ask me, I'm like, I don't even know how to cramps, but no, that's not even cramps because every woman experiences different pains, right?
Yes.
So then it's more like the mom is be patient. And then if you really want to make a difference in your child's life, get
Mhm.
help, right? If it's
Mhm.
something easy, then you can do it. There's so many books, you know, information out there where you can start, right? And if not, then look for help. Because when my daughter was 9, a friend of mine told me, hey, Brenda, my daughter said that your daughter wanted to, kill herself. And I thought it was a joke.
Mm.
It was a joke. I was like, okay, she's only 9. What is she talking about? Like, anybody say that, right? So you don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
And the year kept passing by. And I could see, like, when she started becoming a teenager, because I believe, like, what I have experienced so far as a mom, that's where all the challenges start, right? And if you're not prepared, oh my goodness, I started losing a lot of hair. My eye will like twitch a lot, my everywhere. I feel like tense. I could not sleep. My knee will hurt. And I was like, man, I feel like I'm, 60 years old, or I don't know, 80. I felt so old, but it was because I was really tired.
Mm.
So then it's like, get help or find or look, or do something about it, but not just wait and think that, oh, she'll be fine. She'll grow out of it. Yeah, she'll grow out of it. But the trauma, it will stay there with her. And the way I see it, it will be passed along. Because I do believe that we pass our traumas, our habits, our patterns to our own kids. So then, I started asking, what are the patterns that I see in my daughter? Okay. And I visualize myself like, oh my God, when my little girls, because back then I think she was like 3 or 2.5. I said, what's gonna happen when she reaches that age? I'm gonna be older. I'm gonna get a heart attack. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is horrible. So
Yeah.
that's where I guess I visualize myself into the future.
Mm.
Seeing yourself to get you there to take action instead of just waiting. Oh, she'll be okay. Like, I don't want to deal with it because, yeah, dealing with it, it takes courage. It
It
takes
does.
a lot of courage.
Yeah, and I think that's, if I had a wish or a hope for people, it's that they do have the courage to kind of visualize both worst case scenario and best case scenario. A lot of times when I'm talking with a parent about their child, and I say, well, what will happen if you just do nothing? If nothing changes? And you can tell they have a hard time answering that question because they don't really want to think about it. Like, right? Nobody wants to think about bad thoughts. And especially if like there's maybe a decline, they don't want to think of their child getting worse. They kind of hope things just stay even keel or stabilize somehow or miraculously improve. Right. But things generally don't just miraculously improve. Like if things improve, it's because we do something differently. And, with the help of a coach, that's, how that happens. So I love what the kind of theme that you've been talking about is, you were living in this like kind of autopilot world where everything was just kind of happening. You were, going through your day without really being kind of aware of like what you were saying, your thoughts and your feelings. And then you develop this like deeper level of self-awareness. And so that when you were transforming is kind of like what brought you, kind of really more being conscious and present. And so how do you remember back, you said you had some suicidal thoughts when you were 17. Like, do you remember what those thoughts were back then? Is it possible to like remember what kind of you felt at the time?
Yes, definitely. Because like, it's like the memory always stay there, right?
Mm,
It's just that the pain is not there anymore, but the
mm,
memory is like it's there. So
mhm,
what got me into, myself into that stage of suicidal was more of I'm not worth it. I don't
mm,
feel loved by my, parents, by my sisters, by none of the people that I was surrounded with.
mm,
Because a lot of like I came from my country when I was 17. So I guess that happened within about 6 months of coming over.
mhm,
And the culture, everything was so different. So not understanding the language, um, not because I had to stay in my country when I was 2 years old with my grandparent. So I met my mom when I was 12, and then I came to the US when I was 17. So to me, I had this idea, as your little child, when you're little, you live dreams, right, in your
mhm,
head.
mhm,
And then when you grow up and it's not what you dream about, you say, what happened? Right?
mhm,
Where was that? So to me, I had this illusion of this dream that when I come to the US, oh, I'm gonna be everything for my parents.
mm,
I'm gonna mean the world to them because I never been with them.
mhm,
So to me, it was like, oh my goodness, they're gonna be so happy to see me. They're gonna love me and everything. They're gonna give me all the love that I deserve, right? And then when
mhm,
I came, like my mom had to work 2 jobs,
mm,
and then she was already divorced. And then my sisters, we were all teenagers.
mm,
Imagine teenagers, especially not living, not racing together, not
mhm,
used to the fights, not used to, because in my country you live more free. Like you play with the kids outside,
mm,
everyone. Here it was
mhm.
like I felt like I was in prison.
Oh.
So it was like, and then back then, no internet, no nothing, right? So maybe it was better, right? Because now it's like, oh, it's more scary than back then. So
Mhm,
yeah. So but then yeah, and mainly was I didn't feel love, I didn't feel understood, and I felt like my life was meaningless.
mm,
So it was like, what's the point of leaving? Who cares about me? I don't think nobody cares.
mm,
And that's when I started like going more and deeper. And the more I thought about it, the more my mind took control over me. And constantly I was thinking, how do I do this? How do I do this? How do I do this? It's like if I just because I used to walk from home to the school until one day I just got into an argument with one of my sisters, and I said, you know what? This is the day. I don't want to live anymore. So I just took a bunch of pills.
oh, wow.
And the next day I woke up and I was in the bed and I was like, what? Where am I? I thought that I was dead in heaven or somewhere. And then I was like, is this real? And then I got even more mad at myself because I couldn't do it.
Oh,
And then I started reading more, like, when my daughter went through that, it's like the doctors tell you watch because when they try to do it once and they didn't do it, then their
mhm,
mind will try more like, do it, do it. So then that's what started happening to me until like one day my mom, I was, at the lunch at school and I came out of the lunchroom and then I saw my Spanish teacher and she saw me crying because I couldn't stop crying. I would cry every day. I
oh,
would I wanted to sleep. I didn't want to do anything. I just, I was just there, like I was kind of dead, but
mm,
live. But in the inside, that's how I felt.
yeah,
And I remember the teacher said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Nobody loves me. Nobody
wow,
loves me." And I just started crying. I said, and the other day I took some pills and I couldn't kill myself. And then
oh,
she
wow,
was like, she started crying with me, right? And then later they called me into the office because suicidal is like, something serious, right? Sometimes we think that it's not, but it is. It all
mm,
depends on the person, what they're going through. So when I saw my mom, when they called my mom from work and I saw her like, on the office, and then she was crying, I said, what happened to my mom? So I
mm,
thought about it, like, what did I do? So I
mm,
started blaming myself, right? What did I do?
yeah,
So then they sent me to a mental, I guess, doctor to get help, the pills, none of that, none of the stuff were working for me.
Mm.
Sleep, the suicidal thoughts still came
Mhm.
until like I remember, my mom told me, "Hey, your grandparents said that if you want to go back home, you can. You don't have to stay here."
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then that to me at that moment, I think it was like kind of awakening for me to stop those thoughts because they were not getting me anywhere. And I was only hurting the people that I love, that I
Mm.
care the most. That was my grandparents because
Mm.
they were my parents. And then
Mhm.
when they told me that, I guess I felt that little light of love. So
Mm.
for someone, I do matter.
Mhm.
Maybe for the people that I'm here, I don't matter. But back home, they love me.
Yeah.
So then I thought I was like, what if I just do it for them?
Mhm.
Right? I want to do it for them because I don't want to see my grandparents hurt. I already seen enough when I was little child. So um, figuring it out, what's going on in the house, can make a lot of difference because little kids watch us as parents
Mhm.
go through, even if we don't say it,
Mhm.
even if we don't say nothing, but we can sense something is wrong with my parents.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you're little, you feel guilty. Maybe it's
Yeah.
my fault because my mom is not doing well. Maybe it's my fault because my dad, said this, or my uncle, you feel all the blame, even if
Mhm.
they don't tell you, but because there's no communication, so you feel like it's all your fault. So that's
Yeah.
how I felt when I was little, and I believe, and now that I've been through this process of healing,
Mhm.
this is basically what I've done to my children. And I can see even now what patterns they are repeating from me. And I'm
Oh.
still working on it, hey, let's do this, let's do that. And I
Mhm.
create a connection in my children that they do listen to me, not just, oh, here's my mom giving me a sermon again. No, they truly listen because I
Mm.
created that bond where they feel love, heard, so they feel like they do matter. Because I believe that that's the number one, for any
Yeah.
human, right?
Yeah, that they
Love.
matter and that they're loved. Yeah. Yeah. So that's my next question is how do you or maybe what was the change maybe from before till now? How do you make your kids feel loved and heard and like they matter? Like how do you develop that connection, especially because I forgot to mention that you have 5 children and many of them are teenagers and so, ages 6, 8, 16, 19 and 22, so young adult. That's a wide age range. And, typically in the teenage years are when a lot of times disconnection starts to happen because for many reasons, but parents don't know how to connect, because teenagers are wanting to develop their own identity. They're wanting to do risky behaviors. They might start to get in trouble. They, want to be connected more with their friends. And so parents sometimes like kind of either give up or they don't have the energy or they don't pursue the children or maybe they over pursue and they're suffocating them. It could go the other direction. There's always the extremes and the teenager needs more space. So they're kind of still pushing away. So what's your advice for the moms today, whether you have a 6-year-old or a 22-year-old? How do you connect with your kids?
I believe the connection start within you, within me first. Because if I don't understand what is going on with me, it is
Mm-hmm.
hard to understand the other person. Because
Mm-hmm.
you have to be able to step in someone's shoes before you can, s- well, you have to step on your own shoes because you don't know what they're going through, right? And a lot of times it's you want to understand. It's not about understanding. It's about loving and hearing what they have to say. Like
Mm-hmm.
listen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Take a few minutes and listen, not without judging, without, asking more questions, without trying to figure out what's in their head. Just like, hey, what's going on? What can I do
Mm-hmm.
for you? I'm here to support you. And then one thing that definitely made a huge difference is that when the mom, is not having a good day, tell your children they can feel it. Tell your
Mm-hmm.
children, you know what, mommy is not feeling well, and give them the reason. But make
Mm-hmm.
sure it's they don't feel like it's their fault. Tell them, you know what? Um, I understand that you're going through this, and it's not your fault either, right? Make
Mhm.
sure that they are not feeling blame.
Mm.
Take off the baggage of them because
Mhm.
we already carry too much. And imagine in the little mind of a child, their mind is not fully developed, right? Sometimes neither us. We're in the process of learning. So then
Mhm.
just say it. I used to tell my little one, like today, right, that I was called from school that she got sick. And then I was like, oh, okay, I was planning on doing other things, but then, okay, that's fine, right? So I told her, like, I'm gonna pick you up. Mommy has to do a few phone calls. And she said, why? For what? And sometimes, like in the past, I will say, you know what? Because yeah, you don't understand. And then if I was nervous, I will answer like that, right?
Yeah.
And depending on how I was feeling, I will answer that way. So now I make sure that pause for a moment
Mhm.
and pay attention to what you're gonna say.
Mm.
Right? Stop. Like I will tell my clients, like, put the brake. If
Yeah.
it's the manual brake, put it on because a lot of time we speak too much.
Mm.
We don't hear, right? So then
Mhm.
taking the blame of your children makes a lot of difference. And then
Mm.
explain to them, hey, you know what? I'm crying because I don't have problems. Maybe you know what? My computer broke down. Maybe my stomach ache, maybe something. And it doesn't have nothing to do with you. Okay.
Mm.
Mommy
Mm.
is okay. Mommy just needs some time to relax. Because I realized one thing that you're showing your kids what emotional intelligence is,
Yeah.
right? They are
Yeah.
seeing you. Because you know what? And now she's 8, but back then she was like around 6 when I started the whole process. My daughter said, Mommy, when I want a girl so I can help you. And then I
Mm.
started like, paying attention. What is she seeing?
Mhm.
She said, Mommy, you're always so busy.
Oh.
And then you never take a rest. So I
Mhm.
want to grow up so I can help you.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow. It took me back when I was a child. I used to see my grandma busy all the time. She has to raise 6 grandkids. And, she has 2 grown up children that has some mental, or some disability, and then
Mhm.
another child of her own. And then my grandpa was deaf. So
Oh.
then she had to take care of 10 people by
Wow,
herself.
that's a lot.
And I used to see her crying all the time because her daughter had epilepsy. And then I
Mhm.
was like, what do I do? So I grew up like that. So now I get it. We pass those trauma into our children. So heal the mom, heal the dad, heal the relationship so you can bring that healing into your own children. And
Mhm.
yes, sometimes in the process, the kids need some help too. So find someone that can work in the meantime that you as a mom or as a dad are getting better because it will make the process faster than if
Mhm.
one person working alone.
Yeah, I think that bringing that idea of generational trauma into the conversation is so important because a lot of times it's not even necessarily the generation just prior to you, but it can even be from 2 generations, 3 generations prior. That epigenetics, like things actually get passed down genetically into our DNA, through our DNA, and people don't realize, that's another reason that we can have those strong feelings of depression or anxiety. It's because maybe our grandparent had that, maybe they were in a traumatic family environment and that got passed down. There was this study that I read about recently that was done on, I can never remember if it's mice or rats, but one of those. And they were giving them sugar water and then they would shock them, and so then they would have babies, and it was like 2 or 3 generations down, it was like the grandbabies of the mice, where then every time they smelled the sugar water, they would get stressed. They would measure the cortisol levels in their bodies, even though they were like 2 or 3 generations removed. And it was because it was still genetically programmed into their systems that when they smell, I think it was sugar, but whatever they smelled, it activated that stress hormone in their bodies. And so that's how these things can happen too. It's not always just completely obvious or completely direct. Um, so anyway, back to kind of like what you were saying about you know, we are modeling behaviors all the time for our kids. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever learned, and through one of my courses, was kind of giving a little bit of a running dialogue of what's going on in your head. So, like you said, oh, I had to have some phone calls to make, to kind of explaining to them. And so, one thing that's really important to do is, how as moms and parents, we're always on our phones, because this and that, and we have little ones. They're kind of confused, like, why is mom not paying attention to me? Or I was talking, but now mom's looking at my phone, or she's so distracted, right? And so sometimes we do have to look at our phones. I say put your phone down, but if you have to, it's important to kind of narrate that and say, hey, we are going to that birthday party in an hour. I need to figure out where this is, what the directions are, but kind of whatever the details are, to explain to the child why you're doing what you're doing. And I think that kind of goes with everything. Like you said, if you have a stressful day, it's important to like explain that, like, hey guys, and it's not just for littles, it's for the big ones too. Hey guys, I had a stressful day. My car broke down. I was late to my meeting, and oh my gosh. But that's really modeling the resilience as well, because we're showing that, like, that's not the end of the world, right? Like, we had a rough day, something bad happened, it challenged us quite a bit, but we're still able to come back together as a family. We still love each other. Like, we can still get through this, whatever it is. And so kind of like really sharing a lot of that, I think, is important, because like you're saying, when it's more quiet or kept secret, the child wonders. And when they're wondering, they're generally putting negative meaning to whatever is happening, because they don't know what else that is, right? They just see mom crying, or mom stressed, or mom upset. And the way their minds are working is just to assume kind of the worst, like, oh, it's my fault, or oh my gosh, right? Like they don't have the cognitive skills to be rational and think, oh, well, mom had a bad day because her car broke, right? Like, they can't think that way. And so
Right.
the more we can share and be vulnerable, but then also show our resilient side too, that's really modeling that for them as well. Um, and so what else can we bring to the audience today? Like, when you, have gone through this whole, evolution for yourself just since 2020 with your daughter, what else, like, have you learned as a mom, as just the leader of your family, and from someone who has really kind of had that generational kind of trauma and baggage and stuff that kind of was bringing them down in the past to the present? It's like you're a different person. I can tell, like, you're a different person from when I met you. And so it's like, what else like goes into this process?
One thing that had helped me a lot is to understand that there's a relationship with yourself, relationship with money, relationship with your body,
Mm,
relationship with, in the spiritual or God or whoever you believe, right? If
mm,
there's not a good relationship, because what I started figuring out is like there's a gap, right? Like Joseph said, we all know what to do. We just don't know how to do it or how to get there, because
mhm.
there's a gap, right? There's a
Yep.
space in between that's figuring it out, like what's going on in here. It will make a difference in all those areas. And to work at that deeper level, to me, it requires someone that it's skill, that has the knowledge to take you there.
Mm,
Because if you want to do it on your own, you might be able to do it. It's just it will take you longer. That's
mhm,
how I see it. Because
mm,
I will watch YouTube, I will not watch news because news will scare me. I will watch anything that, that will give me that I was looking for. But it's not the same as when you work with someone, because that person is just one on one, right?
mm,
Listening.
mhm.
Hey, what else is going on? Because like the coach or the person that is helping you, the mentor or whoever, you find help with, it's seeing what you can't see, because we all have that blind spot. We
Yeah.
can't see ourselves, right? So then
Mhm,
whatever area, because one time I heard like you might be doing good in money, but you're not doing good in health, or you might not be doing good in, love. So what is it, right? And we all can be whole in just one, like if we understand all that part. It took me
mhm,
some time. It
mm,
wasn't just overnight, because it is a process, especially if you had to heal a lot of, trauma. That's
Mhm.
what I would say. Like, figure out, you know, the relationship that you're trying to build, whether with money, whether with someone, love, whether your body, because sometimes we're so mean to our body, right? Oh, I don't like this hair. I don't like this hands. Oh, my lips are ugly or stuff like that. And sometimes we speak out loud and our
Yeah.
kids are hearing and they're repeating.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think my biggest was the money. But now it's like, oh my goodness, I got it. I got that part too. So I understand, right?
Mm.
And be patient because it is a process. It's not just overnight. Just the main thing is take action. You see something that you don't like, take action because that area is telling you something is wrong. Work it out. That's why it's showing up in your life. And
Mm.
right? Isn't that we project
Yeah.
outside what we have inside. So what's inside? And that, to me, honestly, it takes somebody else to help you lead you that way. I do the work and the other person lead me, right? So it's
Mhm.
like we have to partner with somebody if that's
Mhm.
what we're looking for to get us faster. Because, like, Joseph said, further and faster. And yes, that's definitely true.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I like just bringing up that definition of kind of like what coaching even does, because not everybody knows. Like, it's kind of like knowing where you currently are and knowing where you want to go. A lot of times people don't know where they want to go, they know where they don't want to go. So that's kind of like the first thing, first obstacle, first meeting is okay, stop focusing on what you don't want, focus on what you do want. But then, even when they focus on what they do want, they still don't necessarily know how to get there or know what the steps are. So just like what a coach can do is kind of help them break those steps down, help them figuring out what the blind spots are, what the barriers are, the obstacles are, all those things, but then also help hold them accountable because, if we are coming from an identity of something like lack or scarcity or sadness or depression or anxiety, right? It's hard to make those changes without, like you're saying, the relationship with yourself, becoming a new version of yourself, like a new and improved version, like, the Brenda 2.0 or whatever we want to, and the 3.0, right? Because that's what we're always doing. I know, I love it. That's what we're always doing, right? We have all these iterations of ourselves, and sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, but like having a coach can help, even when you feel yourself wanting to go back to your old ways or your old patterns. It's kind of like, the equivalent I always give is like a person who's kind of going on a diet, right? It's like
Mhm.
they, cut out all the sugar and they do all these things, and then they're at a birthday party and they're like, oh, I really want that, right? And it's like, we can take all the ice cream out of the freezer, but that doesn't change the person, right? That doesn't change who that person is on the inside. So just because you remove something doesn't mean that's fixed. So it's like kind of really getting deep. And so what other thoughts do you have about developing that relationship with yourself and building it into a stronger kind of 2.0 version?
Hold on. I'm sorry, I got distracted because I had my son pick up my daughter from
Oh, yeah,
school.
no worries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So what was the question again? Because I see it popping up on my
Yeah, no, and the funny thing is my daughter was too, because it gets through on the VIP when
yes,
something's happening.
we are
Uh,
moms, okay?
we're having a mom moment. Exactly. I was kind of referencing that what you said about relationship with yourself. And so, what are some other ways that you've really like built that relationship with yourself in order to kind of what I imagine in your past was some, self-doubt, self-loathing, all those things that are procrastination or hesitation or fear of failure, fear of success, all the things that humans have. How did you kind of like build this up into having like a more positive self-image?
I heard this, I believe it was in the Atomic Habits.
Mm,
All habits are built little by little,
mm,
whether it's good or bad, right? It's just sometimes we focus more, like you said, on what we don't have. So we constantly are focusing on the negative, like what am I doing wrong, instead of what am I doing right, right? So
mhm,
the first thing I think is mainly to really sit down and think and write, like right now, because
mm,
a lot of times when I'm thinking, I'm just in my head. I'm alone in my head, right?
mhm,
So what words am I saying to me?
Mm,
What questions am I asking? So I created more like being aware. And I just started doing that, like, okay, observe my hands or observe myself in the mirror because I would not look at myself in the mirror, for some time because I just felt like not ugly in the outside, but ugly in the inside. So
mm,
I felt, pain seeing myself because I felt like a failure. Like you said, all those, imposter syndrome and a lot of those stuff is like, who am I?
mm,
I'm trying to correct my daughter, but who am I? Right? I'm trying to do this. Who am I? So then just started being more loving to myself, like
mm,
accepting this is the Brenda with this hair, with this nose, with this hand, not just the physical, but the inside, the one that gets mad, the ones that sometimes, scream, the one that doesn't have patience, the ones that doesn't do the things right. And I started telling my kids, hey, I said, mom is not perfect. I'm working on it to get better. Yes, right? But as much as I want to be perfect, there's no one to be perfect. There's no one on earth that have their life fixed. We always run into problems, right? Problems are part of life. So I started accepting that problems are part of life. You
mm,
can't run away, right? Because like, we learn in the neuroencoding is like running away emotions. And that's what I basically had. I was running away because I did not want to think. My brain was like, it's too much. I can't take the pain. I can't think, right?
mm,
So, and then I heard this like if they'll pay you to think, you might not want to get the job because that's the hardest thing to do. Think.
mhm,
Yeah,
mhm,
and it is true. Think. I'm like, what am I gonna eat today? Especially if you don't like to cook. That's painful, right? Think,
mhm.
oh, what am I gonna cook? So
Yeah,
it's just basically getting to know you in a little deeper level. What do you want? Maybe that would be start asking, right? What do
yeah,
you want?
yeah. And I like what you said about thinking is hard, and that's why a lot of times we just avoid it, right? We avoid the hard stuff. You know, we're wired to go for the pleasure and seek pain or seek pleasure and avoid pain because it's difficult and it takes brain energy. It takes our brains use what 20% of our daily calories, caloric intake, and 20% of the water that we drink. That our brain is a machine. And so a lot of times it's like if we are run down and we are stressed, some of the basic things is like sleep, exercise, eating a healthy diet, stress management, all those things, just literally so our brains can physically operate in a better way. If we think of it like a machine, like a racehorse or a car is like another analogy. It's like, we got to put the oil in, we got to put the gas in, we have to do it so it'll go. And that's so just like even from a very foundational level, getting ourselves operating better. But I love what you said about explaining to your kids that problems are part of life, and kind of like this self-compassion that you've developed for yourself, to become closer and love yourself more, accept yourself more, treat yourself like you would a friend, talk to yourself like you would a friend. We say nice things to our friends, but then somehow we are mean to ourselves. We just do it. And so kind of like picking up on that and saying, no, we're not going to be mean. We're going to be nice to ourselves, kind to ourselves. And I love what you said, like, this is me, this is my hair, this is my body, this is me, my hands, but on the inside, this is me. And so kind of like really developing that relationship with yourself, I think that would go such a long way with so many people to really just embrace yourself. Because at the end of the day, if you don't do this work on yourself, who is? You know,
Exactly.
people cannot do this for you. It's that's kind of what makes us human is we can only do this for ourselves. So okay, any last words before we wind down? I mean, we talked about a lot. I really love actually what you said about hope. I didn't bring that up, but that was one of the very first things you said was, initially when you were your daughter was having the struggles and you were looking for somebody to blame, somehow you found hope. So maybe we could tie that into kind of the last part here. How can you encourage or inspire hope for moms?
We all, I believe, most of the moms, I mean, I'm pretty sure we all want the best for our family, for our kids, right? So we have to keep ourselves hopeful that it's for the better. Everything that is coming our way is for the better, even if it is the problem. Because look at me, my daughter was the one that woke me up, literally, woke me
Mm,
up to that level to say, enough. I'm cutting it. I'm not gonna let this go through any of my older children. So I decided to cut it off, right? So then that's what it was like, some having some hope within me that everything is working and I'm being guided to where I
mm,
am gonna go. Because at that moment, I didn't know. Remember when I said I started praying, I was like, if you have something for me, show me the way. And then I
mm,
surrender. I said, whatever that is coming, whether it's good or bad, is for me to embrace it and grow with it, right? Work on
mhm,
it. And I realized it was a process. Like, I will
mhm,
not be who I am if it wasn't because my daughter went through that. And I tell her, because sometimes she feels bad, right? And I tell her, you know what, honey? I said, the reason we had this whole transformation is you. So actually, you're
mhm,
the hero in the story because
mm,
you got mama, to do her, to work on herself, to be a better version of herself.
mm,
And I think,
mhm.
that started like relieving some pressure off her shoulder because she felt guilty, right?
Oh,
Yeah, because a
yeah.
lot of times, like everything I do wrong.
Mm. I bet that brought some level of kind of healing or closure for her that, she's the reason things got so bad that they got good again, right? They grew and kind of evolved in a really positive sense. And so if you don't mind sharing, or you don't have to, how is your daughter doing now?
Well, I can tell you, she has no suicidal thoughts anymore. She's still working on some of little areas because it's normal, right? And she created this acrylic nail, business doing her own. So I'm like, man, girl, you're a business girl. And all that was, underneath that little child, that little, hurtful, that she was hurt, right? So when she
Mhm.
started healing, her true nature start coming off. Like, she's very
Mhm.
creative and I'm super proud of her. I tell her like,
Mm.
oh my goodness, like in her name in English means star. So I say, you are my star. That's
Oh.
no coincidence, right?
That's the perfect, like, kind of visualization or symbol for hope in my mind. When you said that, I was like, "Oh, she brought the hope back to your family as the star kind of in the family." And, Brenda, how can people find you, if they wanna reach out to you? Where can we send them?
Social media, Brenda Melendez Coaching, or also on my cell phone, 832-818-0947. I live in Houston, Texas, Central
Okay.
Time. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Brenda, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for opening up, being so vulnerable as you always are. And I really believe that this message that you gave today and shared is going to impact definitely one person, but hopefully many, many more. So thank you so much for tuning into the Spanglish Radio Network. Watch it, read it, download it, live it. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.